You just gonna jump right into the PowerPoint?
Yep. After I'm gonna introduce us. You know what I mean?
Okay. These will have.
Moving slow today. Let me take the
Oh, okay.
internet off. Take my internet off my phone. It's loading up here, and we are live.
Okay.
Yes, sir. All right. So, how y'all doing today? We back on. Got a special presentation for you guys. I'm trying to wait till it load all the way up on the YouTube because it showed that it's still loading up on the YouTube. So let me wait for a second. All right. Oh, that thing moving slow. I think we good. All right. Oh, all right. Peace to the family. We got a special episode tonight for the guests. You know, it's me, due diligence, my big brother Nu, you know, and we just come to give y'all some of this good information, man. We here to raise the bar. We here to break some of these spells. You know, we trying to calibrate your mind, point you in the right direction, you know, all that. We here for the good stuff. You got something you want to say, Nu? Want to say something to the people? You on mute. You on mute.
Peace, family. I'm just ready to get to it. Let's just get to it. You know, I ain't got nothing to say though. Other than I vibe everybody healthy and everybody happy.
Peace, peace. Well, all right, let's get into it. As you can see on the screen, you know, today's topic is about race, fact, or fiction. It's the title of the presentation. I'm going to bring it to you live and direct. And I know everybody feels some type of way about race. You got your concept on what race is and what it isn't. And you know, people will say, you know, yeah, there ain't no such thing as race. It's just one human race. You just put yourself back into the construct again whenever you say that. So that's not all the way correct. You know what I mean? Because human is a species. You know what I'm saying? So that would be correct. And then there's still subtle differences between humans, you know, that may and may not be important. Whenever you're dealing with medicine and things of that nature, you know, what your blood type is matters. You know what I mean? In those situations, that's when, you know, quote unquote race or the subtle differences between different types of human beings matter, medical and stuff like that, you know. So race to fiction, yeah, today. You with me, Nu?
Yeah,
All right.
I'm with it. I'm uploading to my Facebook this show.
I bet.
I had forgot about it earlier.
So the first slide, what's up? So the first slide, what determines what a race, what determines what race you from? That's the question. You know, what constitutes a race? These are just some of the questions that you should ask yourself, and we'll be asking you throughout the show. You know what I mean? If you believe you belong to a race, what constitutes a race? What constitutes a race of people? What attributes, what principles, what places you in that category? Because if you know what race is, it's a categorization system, a taxonomic system. It's the way to categorize people. That's what it's supposed to be. So if you place yourself in one of these systems, one of these class systems or caste systems or racial categories, you have to have some type of attributes, some type of distinctive characteristics where you can call on and say, this is why you belong to such and such race. What is it? And not only you, a whole group of people, right?
Facts.
Is race scientific? Can it be proven by science? I believe that that's a valid question. You know, is it scientific or is it just something that we use? You know, is it just, you know, just nomenclature that we use and we just throw around willy-nilly? Can race be backed by science? If so, what is the methodology to determine such a thing? And, you know, that's basically what I was saying. Like, you know, what are the modes? What's the methodology? Break it down for me. Why do you belong in such and such race? Is race a social construct? And I talk to people, and a lot of people will say, yeah, but then they don't even know what a social construct really is. So let's get into it, people. No, you can interject anytime if you got anything to add at any point, you know.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm listening wholeheartedly. But I was still trying to share the link because I didn't see it on your page and I didn't see it on my Facebook page. So I had to go to my Gmail and I'm copying the link. Now I'm posting it.
Remember, we're doing YouTube and then sharing the YouTube to the Facebook.
Yeah, I didn't see the YouTube on your page. You know what I'm saying? I didn't see this particular show on your page.
Yeah. You have to
I was going,
you have to go to the YouTube.
Okay.
Social
I got it.
So let's deal with social construct, right? The definition. An idea that has been created and accepted by the people in the society. A social construct is something that exists not in objective reality, but as a result of human interaction. That's the general definition of what a social construct is, right? It's an idea that society holds on to, a group of people that says they agree on something. Like, for example, government, you know, government is a social construct that says we agree that we are going to abide by these rules and this is how we're going to function. You know, not everybody agrees on the way, but we agree that we need law and order in some instance, you know. Yeah. So government is a social construct. It's not nothing. I know you see these buildings and I know you see judges, but the whole concept is just an idea. It's really a concept of the mind and we manifest it. So it's a tangible thing, but really it's not. It's just something we made, but it's really it's a fiction of the mind. So that's one example of what a social construct is and how it applies to race, or maybe it doesn't. So this definition of race is from the dictionary, right? A family, tribe, people, or nation belonging to the same stock. Now, this is going to get us in trouble right here. Same stock. That may be an obsolete term. A class of people, a class or kind of people unified by shared interests, habits, or characteristics. A category of humankind that shares certain distinctive physical traits. So this is from the Merriam Dictionary that says race is the same family, tribe, people, or a nation belonging to the same stock. We got to classify what stock means. We got to make sure we clear on what a stock of people is, because really that's a term that we use for like livestock, animals and stuff like that, which humans are animals. But if we got different types of stock in the human species, then we have to know what those are in order to say we belong to a specific race, if that's the case. I don't believe we have different stock of human. but it's up to us to decide that, because we're dealing with constructs. Whenever you bring these ideas into existence, it's up to nobody but us to classify these and verify and validate them or not. I believe that's important. People, you have to know that you have the power to validate these things or not. You just don't have to accept anything that no community brings to you. The scientific community, the government, your religious community, I don't care who it is. You should vet any information that's given to you the proper way, and if it sits well with you, accept it or not. But just because something, you may think somebody is smarter than you and they bring something down to you, you don't have to accept it. Be vigilant, do your due diligence. So these are the things. Merriam Dictionary is what race is. I can show you plenty of definitions that I don't agree with, but that's just me.
Hey, dude, check it out. Important definition there, and I don't know if my background loud, but it's like 1:22 where I am. You feel me? So it's like the middle of the day. So everything is going on outside, even though it's outside my window and outside my door. I stay in like an apartment block, so it's very noisy out there. But check it though. And I posted a video on Facebook just today, I think, concerning race. And I might try to pull it up if I could share my screen or whatever later. But that's an important point, that 2A, the Merriam-Webster of race, where it reads a family, tribe, people, or nation belonging to the same stock. That was the original definition of race, though. And I know we focusing on the stock part, but the family and tribe part, that's important because it had nothing to do with color.
Facts.
It had nothing to do with a nose, nothing to do with a feature. Look at the definition. That was what a race originally was. It was just to be a part of a family or a tribe or people or a nation or belonging to the same stock. Now, later on, they turned stock into stock market. You know what I'm saying? And people into cattle or chattel property. That's facts. But this just shows how they changed the definition and they changed the wording later on down the line. But I like that. You got up the original definition for race. And that was like what the and to give credit where credit due, we don't usually do shout outs. And he been, but I give him credit. I saw Sarah Sudan Seti, you know what I'm saying, talking about the Germans. I was shocked because he was talking about the German history and different things like that. I thought that was very good because he went straight to the I forget, it wasn't the Gutenberg or the Guggenheim. It was another Google. Feel me? It was another name like that. Some more Jews. But he went to them and he showed how, they had created the initial 5 races. Black, white, yellow, red, and brown. You feel me? They created the 5 races. And they basically, created what we know today as racism. So he was at the part where he talking about the racism, but you at the part before that where those Germans, like the Guggenheim family, was actually setting this up and setting up the logic behind this. But they were setting it up for them. This was where they was using race as something for them as good, like we're part of a family, a tribe of people. But then later on, it turned as a separation, color, like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. So, it could have been better, like family and tribe. We know that's how people identified themselves back in the day, man. And when you put that race on top of it, it just turns into something completely different. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like these are valid terms to identify yourself. Like, before race came into existence, this is how people identify themselves, with the last name or the tribe, So yeah, it definitely was valid at one point in time, and it's still valid to this day. You can identify yourself however you choose, But the thing is, when you fall into somebody else's government, they will identify you how they choose, and it's up to you to be able to stand on it, accept it, or don't or not. So we're going to deal with a little bit of etymology, and I think since we're going to be dealing with words and defining things, it's only fair to deal with a little bit of etymology. And no, this is why I need you too. You good with words, man. So anytime you want to jump in, you can. So everybody might not be familiar with what etymology is. So I'm gonna give you the definition of what etymology is. The study of the origin of words and the way in which their meanings have changed throughout history. The origin of a word and the historical development of its meaning. You see, words change over time. Words change through different languages, and words get added to their definitions and taken away. Words get refined the longer it's used. So I was trying to explain to a brother the other day. I was trying to explain to him that definitions aren't definite, and that's a prime example. Because if definitions were definite, you wouldn't have 10 dictionaries by the same people, and you will actually see the words change gradually over time. They get added to and taken away from the definitions. So that's up to us. That's what I tell people. The brother disagreed with me, but this is the whole point of etymology, the origins and the history of words and how they change through time. And the dictionary tries to define words, but it's really just descriptions, and it's not as definite and absolute as people would think. You agree, Nu?
Yeah, not at all, man. I agree with you 100%, but not at all. Words definite. I mean, I can't even see it. Like, you could take a simple word like READ, and we can't define it unless we got the context and the content. We don't even know whether that's read or read. You know what I'm saying? I don't know till you tell me what we're talking about, So words definitely not definite and cannot be defined. Like, we say stuff like a picture worth 1,000 words. Then a word worth 1,000 words. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't describe a word. You could describe it. You could have descriptions of it. I give you that. Give them that. But the definition, you can't be definite. Because it would be too binding for a language to be definite anyway. You know what I'm saying? Like, that means people wouldn't have no freedom to use words the way they want to. It would be a definite way to use every single word. You couldn't use no other word outside of this way it is. That wouldn't even make sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
but let me say one more thing. You right back at it. Good. Etymology is one of the most important departments of linguistics and mathematics that you could ever endeavor. So if people out there want to know about where to really look up the description or the meaning of a word, not necessarily the definition, then look it up etymologically.
Peace. And this is the online etymology dictionary, dealing with the word race. So first of all, it says race came about in history. The term race, the word race, around the 1560s, the 1400s. You know what I'm saying? So this is what etymology says. So just with that right there, think about when people ask you the question, are Egyptians black or white? Or any other class of people in antiquity? So if you ask me that question in the present today, and I know that the word race didn't come into the lexicon is the words that we use, didn't come into existence until the 1560s, then you placing a construct on a people that didn't even have that for themselves, right? I'm saying that to say they didn't think of themselves in those terms. So for us to place it on them, it would be incorrect, because whenever you're dealing with the past, as far as asking yourself, who were these people? You want to define these people how they define themselves, not put a label on them and place them into your own social construct, right? They have their own ways of classifying themselves and the people around them at that time. So if you want to be accurate, you want to use the terminology that they use, right? Instead of trying to place a modern concept on an ancient people. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't work that way. So people have these arguments, and it's really nonsense if you really think about it. So that's even before we even go any further. You know what I mean? It came into existence around the 14th century. People descended from a common ancestor, class or persons allied by common ancestry. So coming to the 1560s, and they defined it as people descended from a common ancestor, class of persons allied by a common ancestor. They say it come from the Middle French race. Earlier, Raza, this is how people said it in these times in these different languages, right? Breed, lineage, family. These are words that's kind of like synonymous with race at these times. This is how they using it when the construct came about. Possibly from Italian, raza, which is an unknown origin, cognate with Spanish and Portuguese raza. Etymologists say it has no connection with the Latin radix, the root. Though they admit this might have influenced the tribe nation, since and race was a F15C. I don't know what that is. I think that's just a reference to somewhere else in the dictionary that we don't have. So basically, this is how it's going through history, right? So it's going all the way back, and these are the way that it was meant whenever the word first came into history. You know what I mean? Head, beginning of, origin, all these different things. So what we can gather from this right here is that it more than likely it came in the 1500s. You know, this is what it originally meant from what we know. So that's a place to start. You know, so now you got a good grasp of where race come in the history. And this is really significant when dealing with us in America, right? Because when did we get to the Americas, right? So this is prime time to when we came into America. At the same time, this social construct comes into existence. Now, just keep that in mind. So just realize if the concept of race didn't exist until the so-called transatlantic slave trade, right? It's just kind of suspicious, the timing of this whole construct and what goes along with race and law and people and all that. So it's kind of fishy, right?
Yeah, I agree. The date 1560 is right in line with, you know, like the whole King James and the whole British settlement of them getting the UK together, the United Kingdom, as they call it. You know, 1566 was the letter J was brought into the language. They was messing around with the Bible, and you know, this like, oh no, I guess another one on SETI, credit to SETI. You know, this was before the printing press. You see what I'm saying? Oh yeah, this was a time when they was trying to get their linguistics and their language and mathematics together so that they could enforce it on the world.
Absolutely.
So they was trying to develop their own languages, because a lot of people think they had languages and stuff. They really didn't. Like one thing brother said, it was pointed out, is that the Hebrews wasn't even considered black back then. They were considered non-white at first because they wasn't Anglo, but later on they were classified along with white people. The Celtics, the Hebrews, you know, that's part of the video I posted. Maybe we'll get into it, but the point here is that I just wanted to point out that this time right here in 1560s was a very, what you'll call aristocratic or, you know, oligarchy type of time, where they were using like their family lineage to gain power and to use that as a way, you know. So, and that's what brought about race. And then they started with the red blood and the blue blood, the Yorks and the Lancasters. But before you leave that slide, let's go back one time. I want to say something about it. That last slide, right here, yeah, at the end, where it's talking about the sense. That's a big thing. We got to look that up one day out and show the people. Like I was saying, like who was it? Which one of them Germans wrote on it? It was Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer wrote on sense and reference. Yeah, he wrote on sense and reference. But that word sense is giving us a sense of what race means. Like that's how they would do it. That's how they do it in philology. They use the word sense, and now it's gonna tell you, like, it's gonna give us like a sense of what they was using race back then. You know, kind of like almost like saying, let's use race in a sentence, and then that's what that means. Go ahead.
Yeah, right before it says tribe, nation, sense. You know what I mean? So race, you know what I mean, is in that sense. That's how it
happened. Yeah, it was in that sense. Yeah. Facts. On which, and race was a form of radix. That word they use with the Middle English via Old French. Watch this now. And Ra'is or Ra'is. Klein suggests the words derived from Arabic Ra'as, head, beginning, origin. Compare Hebrew Rosh, like Rosh Hashanah, like the head of the year. So race really originally come from the word head. That's all it meant. And in Egyptian, that'll be hair, like face, but they call it head. They say face, but you know. Mm-hmm. But that's funny.
Absolutely.
So we now know you just revealed the real original etymology of the beat this in, because people, we say it fast and it's a big point. The real meaning of race is head.
And not head in the sense of your head, but like, you know, the head of something, or the original of something, you know, the
beginning
head. Yeah, the origin, the Godhead or something like that, you know what I mean, the original, you know what I mean. So, you know,
I'm with it. But that's it. We can move on. That was good though. I like that. Yeah, I like that.
So here's some more etymology on race. The word race, interpreted to mean an identifiable group of
identifiable.
Ooh. Interpreted to mean an identifiable group of people who share a common descent. Was introduced into the English in about 1580 from the Old French raza. I mean, we went through this, Italian raza, and earlier, but etymologically distinct word for a similar concept was the Latin word genus, meaning a group sharing qualities related to birth, descent, origin, race, stock, or family. The Latin word is cognate with the Greek words genos, meaning race or kind, and gonos, which has a meaning related to birth, offspring, or stock. So, you know, that's just, you know, you just got to go through these other, because here in America, we got this bias, we got this arrogance to think that everything's mean what we say it mean. You know, we have a lot of different words from different languages that you're not even aware of. You know what I mean? English is like that. It's a hodgepodge of different languages. Different words from other languages, you know? So, and whenever it gets translated over into the English, sometimes we distort the meaning or change the meaning, add or take away from it. So it's good to know this type of things, because you want to be on the same page with whoever you're talking to. This is how you communicate effectively, you know, and this is how you also stay in context whenever you're doing history and you see stuff like this and you see them using particular words, because in context of the time, it may be a different definition. So this is good to have these things. These are tools you can use.
Yeah, because we went from origin, which was the very beginning, to basically family and tribe, and now we basically defining stock now because they actually using the word race as a part of the definition. You call that race is among the words in the definition now. So we done got down to that part, like in that third step, what you showed on that other slide.
Facts.
But yeah, it was related to birth and offspring, so that's the stock part. The birth and offspring. So that's where they got popping at right there. That's where they start their eugenics and all of that.
Facts.
I'm ready.
So we threw a little wiki source in there just to, as a general little source. Wiki, I think wiki is a good source. You may not.
Me too.
You know what I mean? A lot of people don't like using wiki, but it's a source like anything else, and it's just good to have multiple sources. Excuse me.
Yeah.
We could have went and got some scholarly articles, but you'll see once the presentation is finished. I believe we present enough information to you for you to either come to a conclusion yourself or put you on the path to find some scholarly articles if you want to do that. So, but I just feel like dealing with race itself is really not that deep. You know what I'm saying? Like it's deep for some people, but if you just look at it for what it is, you know what I mean, you'll come to a conclusion if you want to dissect it. And if you don't, I'm doing it for you. So it's here for you today.
Yeah. And I know you know this, but I mean, I'm ready to listen though. You ain't gotta rush. You ain't gotta rush through your reading and stuff. I guarantee you, people need to know what you're talking about. You dropped some. You got some good slides. I swear, they need to hear you.
You know what I mean? We going through it. We going through it. If I'm going too fast, just let me know. I'll slow it down a little bit. So here's the Wikipedia source of race. A race is a grouping of humans based on shared physical or social qualities into categories generally viewed as distinct by society. The term was first used to refer to speakers of a common language and then to denote national affiliations. By the 17th century, the term began to refer to physical or phenotypical traits. Now, just to be clear, I know it's a big word, but phenotypical, it has nothing to do or everything to do with just how you look. That's all your phenotype is. Phenotype is just your outwardly appearance. It's just looking at somebody and say, you look like this. That's what a phenotype is, your facial features, your facial structure, your skin tone, your hair type, all that type of stuff. So it's just a big way of saying like your characteristics, right? Modern scholarship regards race as a social construct, an identity which is assigned based on the rules made by society, while partially based on physical similarities within a group. Race does not have an inherent physical or biological meaning. That's according to Wiki. Race does not have an inherent physical or biological meaning, right? Social conceptions and groupings of races vary over time, involving folks' taxonomies. Taxonomies is a way to categorize things. That's just another word for saying a categorization system, taxonomies, involving folk taxonomies. And folk is just, people. Just, not scientists, you know what I mean? It's just people making these different classes that define essential types of individuals based on perceived traits. Scientists consider biological essentialism obsolete. So biological essentialism is basically saying that types of people, you know what I'm saying? Whenever you say you have a native and you have a black person and it's concrete, you know what I mean? It's not necessarily as concrete as we think it is. The variations between a so-called black person and a so-called native is less than 1%, when you talk about genetics, because really that's the only thing that we have to go off of that's for certain. Anything else is just, lookership. You just basing stuff on the way things look.
Yeah.
And generally discourage racial explanations for collective differentiation.
Differentiation.
differentiation, I just slaughtered that word, and both physical and behavior traits. So, that's wiki. And I think we got another wiki source just to add a little bit more to it. Even though there's a broad scientific agreement that essentialist and typological conceptualizations of race are untenable. All that said was, there's a broad agreement that scientists says on a race factor, there's no consensus. There's no consensus, that you can come to this conclusion about race on what we use. That's all that said. Scientists around the world continue to conceptualize race in widely differing ways, some of which have essentialist implications. While some researchers use the concept of race to make distinctions among fuzzy sets of traits or observable differences in behavior, other in scientific communities suggest that the idea of race often is used in a naive or simplistic way, and argue that among humans, race has no taxonomic significance by pointing out that all humans belong to the same species, Homo sapiens, and as far as applicable, subspecies, Homo sapiens sapien. So that said what it said.
Yeah.
Since the second half of the 20th century, the associations of race with the ideologies and theories of scientific racism has led to race becoming increasingly seen as a largely pseudoscientific system of classification. It said race, the scientific community is saying that race is pseudoscience, pseudoscientific, not real science, bullshit, some shit masquerading as science. Here in the 20th century, the century that we in wiki though, you might not want to take it, but hey, do your research. Although still used in general context, race has often been replaced by less ambiguous and loaded terms, such as populations, peoples, ethnic groups, or communities, depending on the context. So, So I feel like that's a start, you know what I mean? Dealing with some terms, dealing with how people categorize people, dealing with, how it come to the present. Now we in the 20th century. We started off in the 1400s. And, when the race came into existence, we know how we see it today. So let's look at some of the people that's responsible for bringing this word into existence, or what you would call like the founding father of the idea of the race theory, So Johann Friedrich Blumenbach. Now this guy is the father of basically the race theory. He kind of brought the theory all together. The race theory, the theory of race, the concept of race. He is one of the main guys. He's the one that come instead of before it was just people on their own. But he was the guy to kind of like put it all together and say, this people is this people, this people is this people, this people is this people. He is one of the ones. You'll see a couple of guys before him, but one of the main characters is this Blumenbach guy. So what did Blumenbach state? He had his 5 races, his 5 race theory. What was it? Blumenbach's work included his description of 60 human crania, published originally in DeCross's work. You know what I'm saying? This was a founding work. You know what I mean? This is, he's the one that put it together. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So this was the founding work for other scientists in the field of craniometry, right? And what is craniometry? Craniometry is where these people gathered these skulls and just looked at these skulls and thought that they could just categorize people by looking at skulls. They would gather these skulls, measure them in all different kind of ways, look at the different attributes of the skull. So it was thought that people could classify people with just finding the different scores and could place them in the different systems. Hey, will you mute your mic? You got some static or something coming through.
Okay.
Yeah, that's better. And just whenever you want to interject, just unmute and just speak. You know what I mean? So that's what craniometry is. He divided the human species into 5 races in 1779, later founded on crania research, description of the skull, and called them Samuel Morton. The Caucasian or white race. Now, I think this is where we break down his 5 race theory. This is how he applied it. This is how he defined it. The Caucasian or white race. Blumenbach was the first one to use the term for people of European, Middle Eastern, and North African origin, believing that the people of the Caucasus were the most beautiful of the world. So understand, whenever you use Caucasian and whenever you subscribe to races and you put race people in these racial categories, this is what he intended. This is what he believed. You know what I'm saying? So he believed he was the first person to start calling these Europeans Caucasians, and he believed that Caucasians were the most beautiful people in the world. This is the guy that put the race theory together. Then you have the Mongolian race, and this one includes the East Asians and some Central Asians. The Malayan race or the brown race. These are South Asians and Pacific Islanders. The Ethiopian or black race, Sub-Saharan Africans. The American or red race, including American Indians. Further anatomical study led him to the conclusion that individual Africans differ as much or even more from other Africans as from Europeans. So there you have it. This is what you are subscribing to when you believe in the race theory, is what I call it, or the race social construct. This was how it was intended to be used. And then later on in history, it got worse. Today, it's not better. All you have to do is look at Jim Crow, the Constitution, all that type of mess, the class system and caste system that we all have been in today, not only in America, but throughout the world. So let's look at some of this. I titled this one, Biased Beliefs and Bogus Logic.
Hey, before you move on, I was trying to interject, but you know I got to press the unmute to interject. You see what I'm saying? So I ain't want to cut in, but I have to press that unmute. But on the top part, where you were discussing the craniology.
Yeah.
You know, they developed other terms, like those became medical terms though. They took it into the medical field. They took that same racism into the medical field and named that phrenology. And you can see it in the movie Django, you know what I'm saying? Where the oh boy take the head, the skull, and crack it and cut it and show the 3 dents in the slave head. That's when they was starting all of that. Like, these are inferior people type. And that's when all of that became associated with race. And also craniology was something that was, you know, put forth by the incestuous Darwin. Because, you know, Darwin was one of the people who started also with the racism and the eugenics. So basically what I'm trying to do is make sure that I'm trying to add to it and tie into some outside people that was like doing counter work and how they made all this happen, like in a scientific field, on a social level, on a political level, you know, using the dictionary that they created, the language that they were using, and also using the teachings that they would use. And this is what they was doing, putting together by using phrenology, craniology, and these different departments and fields as if they real studies, when it don't mean nothing.
Absolutely. And this is prime time. They building this construct up. They trying to get some validity. That's what we building up for to people. If you understand what he's saying, there's also people that's working on the same thing, trying to come to the same conclusion, and it's building up. You can see You know what I'm saying? So, he's absolutely right. Biased beliefs and bogus logic. Blumenbach argued that physical characteristics like skin color, cranial profile, etc., depended on geography, diet, and mannerism. So this guy believed that your physical characteristics could be determined by mannerisms. Do you understand how idiotic that sounds, that the way that you act can determine your physical characteristics? You know what I mean? Your manners. It doesn't make sense, but this is what he believed, and this is what he used to classify people. He just threw that in there. There's not even no way at his time that you could even determine that. He would have had to look at a whole lot of people through a vast period of time to say somebody's mannerisms determine the way that they look. So why would he even throw that in there? That's just silly. Like other monogenesis. Now, a monogenesis is just simply somebody that says somebody that believes that humans all come from a common ancestor. I believe that's what a monogenesis is. Yeah, just everybody has a common origin. They're saying we all came from a specific ancestor, and I think that's, at this point, it's not a theory. Like, it's proven that we all have a common ancestor. They proved this through genetics, using the mitochondrial DNA that rests in all of us. It's unbroken, and it goes back to one single female as far back as you can go in every human being on Earth. You know what I mean? So I don't believe it to be no theory, and if everybody's DNA go back to a single common ancestor, then that's just what it is. That's what we have to go by. It's not a belief. That's what your body is telling us, and science has discovered that. Blumenbach held to the degenerative hypothesis. Now, what is the degenerative hypothesis? All that means is just people are degenerating. I like to call it devolving. You know what I'm saying? That we started off in our purest form, and then the further you go down in history, people are descending from other people and not being as pure, and maybe turning into something else, or just not as pure as the original people, because we have been diluted or whatever it came in. But just it's the belief that, that the further you go in time, the more you degenerate, basically. Blumenbach claimed that Adam and Eve were Caucasian inhabitants of Asia, and that other races came about by degeneration from environmental factors such as sun and poor diet. Thus, he claimed Negroid pigmentation arose because of the result of the heat of the tropical sun, while the cold wind caused the tawny color of the Eskimos, and the Chinese were fair-skinned compared to other Asian stocks because they were kept mostly in towns protected from environmental factors. He believed that the degeneration could be reversed in a proper environmental control, and that all contemporary forms of man could revert to the original Caucasian race. So that's deep right there. The man that put this race theory together, he believed that everybody descended or degeneration from Adam and Eve, who was Caucasian, and believed that you could return to the Caucasian race, which some people still believe today. I heard somebody saying that not too long ago. I think this theory was still kind of floating around that, people started off as paler or fairer skinned people, and you could return to that complexion. But just check out the logic. So from the dude that made the race theory, he believes that the original people were Caucasian people. And so check it out. This dude is supposed to be a scientist. Why are we talking about Adam and Eve, right? So right now he is letting his religious belief leak over into his so-called science, his pseudoscience. You feel me? Because we shouldn't even be talking about Adam and Eve, right? And whenever we deal with science today, science will tell you that the earliest people on the planet, according to your genetics, I don't care what so-called race you think you belong to, and everybody's genetics, whenever you go back the furthest, it goes back to what we call today an African woman. So why then what we believe the Bible say about Adam and Eve being the original person and definitely being of a Caucasian race, a fair-skinned people? It don't add up with science. It don't add up. So that's how you can let some of your own biases, impose itself on your science. You know what I mean? This is how your own beliefs can influence, supposed to be objective research, supposed to be, right? And then he got that bogus logic talking about mannerisms can affect how you look. Doesn't even make sense. How did he come to that determination?
And he used two of the biggest biases in the world, racism and religion, to make his points, pseudo-scientifically.
Absolutely. So I went and got the definition of craniometry. Craniometry is the measurement of the cranium, the main part of the skull, usually the human cranium. It's a subset of, however you say that word, measurement of the head, which in humans is a subset of anthropometry, measurement of the human body. It is distinct from phrenology, the pseudoscience that tried to link personality and character to head shape, and physiognomy, which tried the same for facial features. However, these fields have all claimed the ability to predict traits or intelligence. And I'll put this in here. Lookership. That's what we call that, ladies and gentlemen. Lookership. This is where people, they said what they did. They feel like they could take your facial structures, your head structures, and say how smart you are. How idiotic is that? How idiotic for somebody to actually believe that, and I say that today, but people believe this back in the day, like this was fact. And this is another thing. People don't understand that facts can change. I tell this to people all the time. There's a difference between facts and scientific facts. Facts change. Words change. Definitions change. They do, and people say, oh, it don't mean the fact itself changes, just people, figured it out and they was just wrong to begin with. Well, if you believe a fact is a fact at that time, you don't know that it's wrong, so it's still considered a fact. So lookership, man, we don't deal with lookership in science, man. You just say what it is, you bring it, you can present it, but you don't present it as no fact, depending on what it is you're looking at and what you're trying to prove. So that was craniometry in a nutshell. Here goes some early. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I switched back to my laptop, so now I can read what you got up here now again, because I had switched my phone back on the laptop. I'm gonna see how it work out. I'm ready though.
All right. So here goes some early taxonomic models, right? So the Greeks are the first ones that was really trying to like classify people. You know what I'm saying? And then also putting these ideologies behind these classifications of people, really trying to put people in these groups and divide people really for whatever their reasons may be, as far as I know. You still have people classifying themselves and giving themselves these different groupings before the Greeks, but in the racial sense, right? Like really trying to classify like the whole world. From my research, it started with the Greeks. They was the first people that was trying to really classify the world and put them into these, organized people. Trying to organize people into these classification systems. So we really don't have to go through this, but here are some references. This is references. I'm gonna leave them on the screen for a minute. And this is just, some references throughout history where people was creating these different classification systems. Like it hasn't been what it is today, and we still building on it. So you don't have to take it to, take it to heart. You know what I mean? These are things that are still steady being worked on today. You know what I mean? Race being a social construct is just now starting to be accepted. You know what I mean? As BS, but in the 30s, the 40s, and the 14 and the 1700s, 1800s, it wasn't no, I don't believe it. It was a fact, So here's some early models of these different classification systems.
Hey, check it out. Where it go right there in the middle of it. That's an important point you got up there though, where it reads, but the scientific classification of phenotypic variation was frequently coupled with racist ideas about innate predispositions of different groups, always attributing the most desirable features to the white European race and arranging the other races along a continuum of progressively undesirable attributes. So basically, in a scientific method, they put the so-called white race first and then put everybody else at the bottom with undesirable attributes. So yes, does you words in the dictionary like black being, and I heard you mention earlier, the black and white in Egypt, but black being black ball, black magic, just black male, just everything black is supposed to be bad. But I like to point out to people that look at the dates on this page. We went from 1560 to 1735. This nothing in the lifetime of Nubian people on the planet Earth. I mean, literally not even a space of time. So we have no business accepting definitions by them as far as the word black go or white, because those are states, not colors. But another thing on the Egyptian and the racism thing, in Egypt, this is where a lot of the racism started. It was so prevalent by the Germans in going into Egypt and then basically taking information and twisting it and putting their own ideological spins on it and social constructs and different things like that, postmodernist views and definitions. So once they did that, this is what most of the people that's in colleges and universities are being told are the facts. So when we talk to them about race, they are running to this as it's being the end all be all of the definition of who we are, when these definitions only date from 1560 to the 1700s. They not the definitions that we use for black. Like, one last point, for instance, in Kemet, in Egypt, we had, and I know you be telling me, you say, bro, you got to get your slides, you got to start putting up some slides and stuff, and I will. But one of the things I want to point out right quick is that when they say, are the Egyptians black, if the land of Kemet mean black, I just want to point this out, that the hieroglyph that they say spell out the word Kemet, the hieroglyph that they say spell out the word Kemet, the first letter in the hieroglyph is supposed to be a K. Now, it doesn't look like the regular K that they use all the time, but it's supposed to be a K nonetheless. And there's some of the definite, indefinite to words or definitions that the brother Due Diligence was talking about, that, those words aren't definite. So those characters aren't definite. But nevertheless, the first letter for Kemet is a charcoal. How much black can you get than that if you put a charcoal for your name? In the first letter in your name is charcoal. And an alligator skin. It's a charcoal and an alligator skin. So I mean, if that ain't the Rebus, and they say they follow the Rebus principle in linguistics over there with the language, if that ain't Rebus principle, what else is it? We gather from those two things, a black charcoal and a crocodile skin, that's black thin. black skin. That's what that means. You see what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So the first words in Kemet is black. So I just wanted to point that out, that they started by going into Africa and into Egypt and using racist words like calling all black people Ethiopians. At one time, that was our name. All black people across the world were called Ethiopians, but people don't know that. But it was called by these same people right here, the same ones you talking about, Blumenbach, whatever his name is. Yeah,
Yeah.
but that's it. I'm with it. Let's roll.
Yeah, great points. And I'm glad you did let me gloss over this. We might as well go through this because this is an important part.
Okay.
I thought this was my reference page, but it isn't. So I appreciate that.
Okay.
In the 18th century, the differences among human groups became a focus of scientific investigations. But the scientific classifications of phenotype variations was frequently coupled with racist ideas about innate predispositions of different groups, always attributing the most desirable features to the whites, European race, and arranging the other races along a continuum of progressively undesirable attributes. In 1735, classifications of Carl, inventor of the zoological taxonomy, divided the human species Homo sapiens into conventional variations of Europe, whatever this is, Europeans, Asiatics, Americanus, you know what I mean? Each associated with it with a different humor. Sanguine, melodic, choleric, and whatever, respectively, right? Homo sapiens was described as active, acute, adventurous, whereas Homo sapiens after was described crafty, lazy, and careless. So basically, like it said, not basically, literally what it said was when they was putting these classification systems together, somehow white people would end up with the better traits than everybody else. So not only, this is where you start getting into supremacy, you know what I mean, the supremacy of people. So not only are they classifying people, they setting up the stage to make certain people better than other people, right? So that's what has to be taken out of this how they was trying to do people, right? So not only are we seeing that we objectively classifying people, right? But because we taking all these scientific measurements and, you know what I mean, looking at this, but then they throw in mannerisms and got humor and, you know what I mean, good attributes belonging to certain people. Like, you know, attributes don't come through race. You know what I mean? Like, you're not a nicer person because you're white. You're not a more energetic person because you're Asian. You're not a more intelligent person because of your race. That comes with work. That comes from a society. That comes from your environment. Those things come from people putting stuff in you. You know what I mean? Now, we can discuss that at a later time because, you know, we can look at that at different angles, but just in a general sense, nobody's you can't put people's characteristics, you can't categorize people's characteristics through so-called race. You can't do it. People's mannerisms through race. And definitely not give a certain race more desirable traits of your character. You know, you can't have more desirable characteristics of your race than somebody else's races because you belong to a specific race.
So we went from race being tribe and family to then they tried to change it up and start saying that race was basically some type of, not tribe and family, but some type of I guess you'll call it a phenotype. We'll just say phenotype. They start going on phenotype, some type of phenotypical characteristic. And now we outside of phenotypical characteristics or anything you can even inherit from a parent logically. And they talking about humor, sanguine, melancholic. That's like inheriting an attitude or you know.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That's like inheriting an ego, a spirit, know anything like that. This is straight pseudo. They so bent on being different in some type of way, and then they throw intelligence in there as if it's something too along with that. But
Exactly.
that's I'm just laughing because this is a beautiful picture, but it's crazy how how easy it is to see how they graduated to just straight up racist.
It's building up, and it still exists today because there's still certain people today that believe that white people are smarter than black people, or black people are smarter than white people, Asian people are smarter than everybody, Indian people are smart because they so-called race. And it's just not the case, people. It's just not the case. All right. So the Human Genome Project, this was a big project. This was important. This was one of the big things of the 20th century, mapping the human genome. This is science at its highest today in the present. This was a big project that cost a whole lot of money, and it was a race. Everybody wanted to do this because the implications of it was big. And we still, now they haven't got this project didn't manifest the things that they thought it would, at least as of yet. But at the same token, we don't know what it has though, because dealing with genetics, you can do a lot of things that you can switch it up. Now we know we can switch genes around, turn genes on, turn genes off, exchange genes, and all this type of stuff. So this was a big project. All right. The Human Genome Project was one of the great feats of exploration in history. Rather than outward exploration, the planet or the cosmos, the Human Genome Project was an inward voyage of discovery led by an international team of researchers looking to sequence and map all of the genes, together known as the genome, of members of our species, Homo sapiens. Beginning on October 1st, 1990 and completed in April 2003, the Human Genome Project gave us the ability for the first time to read nature's complete genetic blueprint for building a human being. All you guys that want to talk genetics out there, come on. You know what I'm saying? If you want to talk genetics, come on, because I heard some of you guys out there trying to say genetics got something to do with race. We're going to clean this up right now. At the public announcement of the completion of the draft map of the human genome, June 2000, Craig Venter, head of the Celera Genomics and chief private scientist involved with the Genome Project, claimed that race was not scientifically valid construct. Now, this dude right here, he had his own genome project. His project was racing the other guy genome project, right? This dude was private, right? And it was a race. You know what I mean? So this dude was smart and he had his own thing going on, which is the Celera Genomics, right? They ended up beating him. The Genome Project ended up beating him. But the head director of the project said out his own mouth that race was not a scientifically valid construct, has no scientific validity. That's right. This is coming from a dude that deals with genetics. You know what I'm saying? Like the things that make you are what you are, who you are. He said that race it's not a valid construct.
You muted up. Your thing is muted. I don't know if you can hear. Yeah, we can hear you now.
All right. So no matter how you feel, you know what I'm saying? No matter how you feel about race, the dude that deals with genetics, that spent all the money in the damn world dealing with this, the dude, genetics are what make you what you are, who you are, and what you look like, and what you are and what you are not. The dude that was ahead of this project said out of his own mouth that race was not a scientifically valid construct. So that's through science. It doesn't matter how you feel. Feel however you want to, just know science don't back it up. And if you're going to feel a certain way, you should be able to back it up in some type of way, shape, or form. Race is a social construct, not a scientific one, said Dr. J. Craig Venter, head of the Celera Genomics Corporation in Maryland. We all evolved in the last 100,000 years from the small number of tribes that migrated out of Africa and colonized the world. This, in essence, is the out of Africa theory. That's what he said. He subscribed to the out of Africa theory. And that's what science says, right? And how can we back that up? Like I said before, through genetics, through the mitochondrial DNA, you can track human history through people, through bones, through skeletons, and through people. And we can all see that we have a common ancestor through genetics. So that's not disputable. And whenever you get to the earliest ancestor through genetics, it is what we would call today an African woman. And then the oldest skeletal remains that we have is a Black woman, or what we call a Black woman or an African woman. So this implies that the oldest people in the world are of African descent, melanated, darker people. And the theory of the out of Africa theory says that, that people migrated out of Africa, settled in different places, and through environmental pressures, what they ate and who they bred with, and mutations of genetics led people to evolve into what they are today, how they look and how their bodies work, because you can be in different places and your bodies will work different depending on what you can put in your system. So this is the theory of the out of Africa theory that he basically said he subscribed to. The head scientist of the genetics of the Genomics Corporation. Dr. Venter and scientists of the National Institute of Health recently announced that they have put together a draft of the entire sequence of the human genome, and researchers had unanimously declared there is only one race, the human race. Now that's kind of, I wouldn't subscribe to those terms, but in essence, we know what he's trying to say. He's saying like, through genetics, we the same.
Yeah, but he wrong though.
Exactly, he didn't use the right.
He wrong, because it just said is no scientific validity to the word race, race at all. It's not scientifically valid. Exactly. So then for him to this dude to turn around and say there's only one race, the human race, that's the whole Me Too, the whole, like all inclusive. It doesn't matter whether or not the Egyptians were black or white. It doesn't matter. Don't say Black Lives Matter. Just everybody be neutral and be a neutrinoid. Don't have no kind of, as they said what race was in the beginning, don't have no kind of culture or community or ceremony or anything like that you consider race, like no type of family structure. They breaking that down. They finna kick all that out. It's just like join us. We are animals. This is the evolution. You're an animal. And I know you saying the great ancestor is scientifically mitochondria Eve, and all the scientists agree that her name is Eve. But if you ask the scientific community that claim to be atheists, they'll claim that scientists are atheists with them. No, they're not. The scientists call the particles God particles. If you look on Google right now, everything they talk about, quantum computers, the God this, the God that, the God algorithm, the God this, the God that. So they the only ones on that, but that's on another tip. But the thing is, though, that the same people that calling themselves atheists and scientists, what I'm pointing out, are the descendants mentally of this school of racism, Darwinism. All of these people we talking about, Blatten Bloom, Dr. Venter right here. These are their sources and references, and these are the people who actually put together the textbooks that the people getting PhDs and the educated people are reading, and then they get online, and I could call names, and they get online and they talk about scientific method, and this racist scientific method is the scientific method that they're using to give our community the background of who we are, what race is, and all of that. That's where they get this, where they getting it from.
Absolutely. And I don't want the people to get it twisted, because just because we say that race is not scientifically valid does not mean we are sitting up here saying that people are all the same either. We just
That's
dealing
right.
with, you know what I mean? We just dealing with the race and its caste system and its class system and all the stuff that comes with it, and how it's just not scientifically valid. But it doesn't mean that people are different and have different temperaments and have different cultural traits and different, a whole lot of biological differences. There are still differences among people. What we're saying is that this classification system that they use is not right. It's not backed by science. So that's what we're saying. But different peoples are different and have different temperaments from evolution too, and genetic mutations, all of that, right? Dr. Venter and other researchers say that those traits most commonly used to distinguish one race from another, like skin and eye color or the width of the nose, are traits controlled by relatively few numbers of genes, and thus have been able to change rapidly in response to extreme environmental pressures during the short course of Homo sapiens history. And in equatorial populations evolved dark skin, presumably against the ultraviolet radiation, while in northern latitudes evolved pale skin, the better to produce vitamin D from pale sunlight. I disagree with that also. We ain't finna
Okay.
I disagree with that also. But
yeah, we black from the start. We always had melanin.
You feel me? And it's what actually they talking about white people that went up to further latitudes, northern latitudes, but they said the reason that they got pale skin was to produce vitamin D better and pale sunlight. I don't know about the science behind it, but it says presumably in the pretext. So they possibly presume wrong. Anyhow, if you ask what percentage of your genes is reflected in the external appearance, the basis by which we talk about race, the answer seems to be in the range of 0.01%. So let's say that again. If you ask what percentage of your genes is reflected in your external appearance, the basis by which we talk about race, the answer seems to be in the range of 0.01%. So you trying to base people in these categories of the outer experiences, outer exterior of what they look like, genetically don't even make up 1% of your genetics. So we can't classify everybody in the world like that. There's so much other stuff that makes you up. It's just silly to use that amount of something. You know what I mean? If you got 100% of something and not even 1% of it make up what you look like, you can't classify nobody from that and act like it's valid. Said Dr. Harold P. Freeman, the chief executive, president, and director of surgery at North General Hospital in Manhattan, who has studied the issue of biology and race. This is a very, very minimal reflection of your genetic makeup. DNA test, ancestry test. I've talked to so many people that think this determines what your race is. No, it doesn't. Let's get into it. This is from Popular Science magazine. In the past few years, at-home genetic testing has grown into a billion-dollar industry. Since 2013, more than 26 million people have sent their DNA for analysis. And while companies like 23andMe, Ancestry DNA, and MyHeritage claim to be able to tell you your ethnicity, a word they know many people will read as a synonym for race, none of them explicitly offer to tell consumers their racial makeup. There's one simple reason for that: the science just doesn't exist. So know that whenever you take these tests, it says nothing about your race. They will tell you where your people come from, what region your people come from. That's about it. What region and time periods on some of them, you know what I mean? But that's it. That's really it. And they fooling people, you know what I mean, by the words that they use, tell you who you belong to, because that don't even make you who you is if you take an ancestry test and it say you have 40% of Nigerian in you, who you are today, you know what I mean? You could be anything, you know what I mean? You say that's what your ancestors are, but you are something different today according to how we view people, you know what I mean? Because these are social constructs, you know? All you can say is your ancestors come from there. You don't know what religion they belong to. You don't know what race, what language they spoke. You don't know nothing. All you know is, you have something in your genetics that say some of your people generally come from this area. That's what genetics is saying. Whenever you deal with the 23andMe and stuff like that,
and all of those. Yeah, I was gonna say, go back to that slide. Yeah, all of those companies right there are pseudo though, because it tell you right there, it say your ethnicity, a word being used basically as a synonym for race.
Exactly.
Once again, all of those DNA companies have set up. Now listen to I want the people to listen close to what's being said here. That all of those DNA companies have set up what they have determined to be ethnicities, races, racial markers, ethnic markers. Now, we just said there is no scientific validity to race. But yet, despite that definition, they done came up with their own and have genetic markers that they call ethnicity and race. And this is what those tests are based on.
Absolutely.
And one day we got to get into DNA and haplotypes and the difference in DNA and blood types and DNA and melanin, because everybody linking that as if it's the same thing, and it's not the same thing. DNA is in everything. We share DNA with everything on the planet. Now, we don't have blood types with everything on the planet. You see what I mean? Now, these are different markers and different ways of weighing stuff in. But they just trying to say, like, no, it's more to it than just DNA. Because each person take a DNA test, basically DNA, and I tried to tell people this a long time ago, and this got a lot to do with this race thing, because DNA basically ties you into the flora and fauna of a place. I'm gonna say it again. DNA ties a person into the flora and fauna of a place. That's it. Whatever they eat, whatever they drink, whatever they smoke, whatever they smell, whatever going on around them, what creates their environment. Now, this is where they get the whole evolution thing from, but this is environmental, not evolutionary. Evolution is just adaptation, mutations, variations, variants, and evolution. That's evolution. But we talking about other aspects of life, dealing with culture and your environment, dealing with the things you actually eat and that make up the cells in your body and produce those type of cells in your body. That makes up your DNA. That's the characteristics that your DNA takes on. That's why they say you are what you eat. So taking a DNA test is not really valuable, because they ship foods all over the country from different places. Your breakfast meat might have came from Peru. Your breakfast grits might have came from China. Your breakfast this might have came from France, and this might have came from the United States. And you throw all that together, so you got DNA from all those places that's making up the DNA in your body. There's no DNA test that's gonna tell you nothing where people from. I promise you, it's a lie. This is a lie.
All right. So what does the Bible have to say about race, right? Absolutely nothing. For one, the social construct, nor the word existed at the time, of the time it's being written.
Yeah.
Whether, I put the wrong word, but we ain't gonna worry about that. That's gonna bother me. Were there prejudices? Probably, but not racial in the way we see race today. To see race in the Bible only means you are imposing a world and trying to apply it in an era that knows nothing about it. The Bible speaks to genealogy, bloodline, tribes. That is all, and that's not the same as race, right? So stop thinking about the Bible. people will gather the race chart from the Bible of how in the Bible how it breaks down people and say these people are certain people and impose race on it and say that's how the race is today. That's no, you can't do that. Because think about it. Let's say you got somebody from 6,000 years ago. Do you know how many different people is in that person genetically? How many times he done mixed with other people? That's why when you get your genetics today, it say you this percent of this and this percent of this, and you can pick which one you want to subscribe to. You know what I'm saying? You can pick any of those. Any of those would be valid if you want to just say I'm this. People take the most percentage of it and say I'm this. You know what I mean? But you could just as well pick any of that, or all of them or none. You know what I mean? Because some people will just say I'm Hebrew and say that's my race and that's my people. And that's not true. Some people say I'm Jewish and think that that's a race. These are all religious terms. And you trying to describe your race, your so-called race. So now you mixing religious terms with genetic terms and trying to describe who you are in the absolute. You just mixing up yourself in the world. But you can subscribe to whatever you want to subscribe from. I'm just telling you, scientifically speaking, it don't make sense.
Yeah.
Scientific racism, right? Scientific racism, sometimes termed biological racism, and a pseudo-scientific belief that empirical evidence exists to support or justify racism, which is racial discrimination. Racial inferiority or racial superiority. Historically, scientific racism received credence throughout the scientific community, but is no longer considered scientific. Scientific racism employs anthropology, notable physical anthropology, anthropometry, craniometry, and other disciplines of pseudo-disciplines. And proposing anthropological typology supporting the classification of human populations into physical, discrete human races that might be asserted to be superior or inferior. Scientific racism was common during the period from the 1600s to the end of World War II. Since the second half of the 20th century, scientific racism has been criticized as obsolete and discredited. Yet historically has persistently been used to support or validate racist worldviews based upon belief in existence and significance of racial categories and a hierarchy of superior and inferior races. Now, basically, the whole thing that we have just described, we have described scientific racism. For example, whenever you say, how many more? Okay. We're gonna go ahead. We got 3 more slides. Race and racism. Now, just because race is not scientific and has no bearing on who you are biologically, does that mean the term is not real? Right? Talking about racism. Absolutely not. You can believe in a social construct, and even though it has no validity, does not mean it can't affect the world. People act according to their beliefs. So look at what the construct of race is good for. So just because I say race is not valid, is not scientifically valid, does not mean racism is in full effect. Because you can still believe race and be a racist and act on it. And that makes it real. That makes it have an effect on you and the world. So don't get that twisted. White supremacy. So if you believe in the concept of race, you are really supporting white supremacy unknowingly or not. It's a class system and a caste system. Here's the cover of National Geographic magazine. There is no scientific basis for race. It's a made-up label. Now, whenever you subscribe to race, you really backing scientific racism. And the prime example that we gave is that whenever they tried to say Adam and Eve were the first people and they were pale people and everybody degenerated from them,
and then they gave the white people more better characteristics than everybody else, that's scientific racism at its highest, at its best right there. And you are subscribing to it. You know, scientific racism was everywhere, you know, and we didn't know it and we believed in it. You know what I'm saying? So, but think about, I feel like it's ironic that science now has proven the reverse of that scientific racist theory, right? For instance, Adam and Eve, right? We now know the earliest human beings weren't white, weren't a fair-skinned people, weren't pale people. Genetics have proved that. And then on the scientific racism side, it says people devolved to darker skinned people, right? Now we have proven that actually it's the other way, that people started very dark and then devolved, degeneration down, however you was put the term, degenerates, you know what I mean, came out of darker skinned people. Now, characteristics aren't based on nothing, you know what I mean, biologically. You know what I mean? It's just put in you, kind of. So I feel like it's ironic that all the things that they try to ascribe to themselves and just guessing and putting it on themselves, that we know today is in the reverse, that we are the oldest people on the planet, everybody descended from us, and that if there was a first human being, they was a darker complexion. People didn't want to believe that because there's a principle in science also that says something that comes from me can never be more superior. You can never be more superior than something that you came from because you came from it. You feel me? That's a scientific principle that people use. You feel me? And I'm not necessarily agreeing to it, but we do know the further that we go in history, the more our genes are becoming watered down. You know what I'm saying? Africa, you know, is holding that together for us. You know what I mean? That's why they go get genetics and a lot of things from over there because, you know, their genes are still pure. You know what I mean? And not in a eugenics way or not in a biased way or not in a racial way, but just objectively looking at it, these people, you know, have better genetic makeup than us. And it's just facts. So we're gonna bring the show to a conclusion on that note, man. And just know that there's no scientific basis for it. If you ascribe to it, you know, it's a racist theory. I see you back, Nu. I wanted to break something down for you. You on mute, big bro. You on mute.
I wasn't going nowhere. I was taking notes. I just didn't want to interrupt. But
did you hear what I said? How it's ironic that now here in the present we have, you know.
Yeah, go ahead though. Finish.
I feel like that it's ironic that here in the present, all the things that they was trying to prove or pull over our eyes with the scientific racism, saying that the first people are Adam and Eve, and if that's so, they were pale-skinned people, and through science, we know that to be wrong. Through genetics, we know the first people were dark-skinned people. And then they also was trying to say through scientific racism that people devolved or had degenerate as white people being the first people, and then black people came from them and are a lower subspecies, when now we know, and through science, that white people come from black people, that devolved from black people, right? Degenerated from black people, you know? So it's funny to me, and it's ironic how they was trying to set up this hierarchy and try to put themselves in a better place, and it all comes full circle to find out that they came from something that they didn't want to come from. And it really seems they probably knew it, they just didn't want to, you know, they know what it means, you know what I mean? Like, it's nothing just bad or nothing like that, but I was saying that there's a principle in science saying that, you know, you can't be superior to, if you came from something, you can't be superior than the thing that you come from, you know what I mean? That's stuff right. Like that. So, you know, I was just trying to bring it to a close. So you want to close out on something? You want to make some points before we go?
Yeah, I definitely want to make some points. like, especially on the last one you just made, that scientific statement. Like, sometimes it said like a substance can't rise higher than its source. You know what I'm saying? That's how they say it scientifically. And I agree with that. And it deals with the laws of thermodynamics and entropy, which would prove evolution wrong scientifically. This my thesis. This is my hypothesis. I'm saying that entropy proves evolution wrong. Because just like you said, I think things are degenerating. They as cells split and become other beings, they don't become greater than they source. You see what I'm saying? But they have sold people the trip that, oh, you get more and more intelligence. But this is one reason why certain people talk about the fall of man.
Right.
That ever since man was created, just like a car, he been getting in worse condition. He been depreciating in his stance. That's why you see all those great monuments, pyramids, and people done straight temples out of one single concrete block, and all the great feats across the world, and they not being duplicated. And they sitting right there, and then they'll tell you it's a secret how it was built. How's it a secret how the pyramids was built when they sitting right there? Ain't nothing to be secret about. Just say I can't do it. They need to just say they can't do it. But and then so that just deals with evolution, because these scientists, this was part of the, I always forget about it. I always forget how the name of it, but I did now. The Paperclip Project and the Geneva Circle. This is where they was, the Geneva Convention. This is where they was getting together to set these type of organizations up. And they later became known as, like, you know, the Bilderberg and all that stuff, the United Nations. But before this is where we at. So I love this subject that we built on tonight. And by the way, you put together great slides, bro. And so the word scientific racism, we cannot just skip over that. That word right there is very important, because it's telling you that they speaking from a scientific point of view, that you do are speaking from a scientific point of view, and that scientifically racism is not something that people can depend on to make a distinction between other people or make a reference to. The other thing you mentioned was caste and class. I wanted to add colonization and colonialization. That these people who started this got their caste or class system. See how they changed from caste to class? They got that, and I mentioned that earlier, aristocracy and oligarchies. They got their caste and class system from what you'll call the Hindus. And they got their colonialization, or what they colonization, what they call colonialization, from the Phoenicians. And basically the points that I wanted to make, that so people can look it up, because a lot of the oligarchies and caste systems and colonization systems, that started with the Hindus and the Phoenicians. And then a lot of the racism and stuff like that started with the Germans, who are their descendants.
I think another, that was great points to add. I also believe that we need to add something else too, because I think people got a misconception, though, that they think that evolution goes in a certain direction. And most people think evolution is progress, means things are getting better, you know. And you have to realize evolution doesn't have a certain direction. Evolution doesn't mean things are progressing. It doesn't mean that. All evolution means is change over time. You know what I'm saying? Evolution is just change, whether bad or good. You know what I mean? Like, people get that twisted. You know what I mean? You can evolve, which is basically a genetic mutation, and it cannot be good for you. Like, whenever you look at the world, we've had a lot of bad genetic mutations that ended up not being good for us. And not only us, but other animals and insects. We have more things died on this planet that's living. You know what I'm saying? So get it out your mind that evolutions mean good, that you're evolving in a good direction, that we keep getting better and better. That's not necessarily true. You know, we take advantage of the traits that we do get, you know, and the body is trying to evolve in a positive manner, but it doesn't get it right every time, you know? And that's just the fact of the matter. Evolution doesn't mean And evolution doesn't have, it's nothing to be scared of. You know, we can talk about Darwin and his racist beliefs and his monkey theory, a grade A theory and all that another time. But, you know, evolution in of itself is not nothing to be afraid of. And it doesn't mean progression in a positive sense, how most people think it is. Now, I was going to bring that into another point, but I got too far into it. I forget why I was bringing it around. But yeah, just in general sense, evolution doesn't mean, you know, progress.
Yeah, that made sense to me. And that was a great point made, that it don't go in one direction.
Right.
That evolution, and yeah, that's hot. That's what time it is.
You know, so we're gonna bring it to a close on that note, man. And I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation. You know what I mean? This is another one. You know what I mean? Write it down.
Right. Peace, family.
Yeah, peace. Share it. You know what I mean? Give it to everybody else, and we'll try to come again probably tomorrow. Hell, maybe later on in tonight and hit you with something else. Peace to the family.
Peace.